Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Phil Melton here with Teed Up with Phil. Again, I'm joined with Charlie Werhane, President of Enterprise Community Investments. Charlie, thank you again for sitting in for additional conversation here.
Sure, you bet, Phil.
So talk to us a little bit now. I want to talk a little bit more granularly as it relates to Enterprise Community Investments and all the areas that kind of flow up through that, which are a number of different operating companies and such within Enterprise. So let's talk through just high level. What are you kind of seeing in general from the businesses? How are you managing COVID? How has that adjusted kind of your forecasting and whatever? Just if we can, just kind of high level business impact.
Sure. Well, we very quickly went into what I'll call a very tight mode as to trying to figure out what's the short-term and then medium-term and long-term impact of really what we at the property level as well as at the investor level. And as I wasn't as specific in the first session, but we also have a development company that owns 14,000 units in the Mid-Atlantic. So we're a capital company, but we kind of know what's going on with these units, and that can kind of give us a really good window into what problems are going to be developing all the way down to the tenant level as well. So, with that kind of basic knowledge, we went into crisis mode, and we immediately retooled all of our meetings to be weekly, some cases daily, to look at several things. One, just our what I'll call our operations at the company. Do we have the right people in the right chairs located in the right place to make sure that draw requests are taken care of and reserve requests and what I'll call the mechanical piece of this, because we're no longer in offices, right? We're in many states, much like you. So different states have different requirements, different things that go on. So just the logistics of running a business, and we have a business continuity plan that, as everybody does, that you never know when you're going to have to put it into effect. Well, we put it into effect immediately and started really tapping those people that really work on that to keep the lights on, I always say. On a technology standpoint, we have a great platform, and as we're talking today, we put Zoom in last year and converted over to that. It's worked well, and we've kind of gone to hyper technology now to make sure that we can communicate and get things done. So all that was going on, and the teams that are working on that are continue to work on that. But our portfolio teams were immediately going to work on looking at what's the impact of COVID on occupancies, on cash flow, not only to our developers, but also to the company. And this happened very fast, as you know, and we have a lot of requirements to really make sure that the money gets from point A to point B. And so we had to make sure that that mechanism was not only in place, but was also going to stay in place and could take a shock. Other things that we typically do on an ongoing basis, risk management, our risk dashboard, things that we never really ever talk about, became very real for us in the board as we began to look at not only the cash flow to the company, but to the projects as well, because ultimately that's kind of what's going to drive a lot of this for us at Enterprise. And we've seen, actually April was pretty good. We kind of got through April. I think everybody did. We're poised to see some softening continue in May. But back to kind of my theory of making sure the stimulus money is getting to the tenants and the tenants are getting the rent to the owners. That's kind of where we're spending our time, not only with our own portfolio, but also engaging our other developers on techniques that they're using to do it. Some have been very active on coming up with ways to take a partial payment. Make sure it's easy to take a payment as opposed to, take credit cards, take them on online payments, things of that nature that some of our developers haven't had, that we immediately were kind of engaging with them on how you would be able to put this capability in on your properties as well. But as it stands, right now, maybe I'll spend a little bit of time on each one and kind of tell you what we've been seeing. The housing credit side of it really has held up very well. There's still good capital in the market. Good demand for deals, and the investors really still seem to be engaged. And much what I said earlier in my first session that we're concerned about probably more would be whether or not the soft money is there from the states to make sure gaps are being filled, and that the mechanics of getting a deal from point A to point B, the attorneys and the approvals and all that you need, that those people are in place to basically get deals closed. So we see it as less of a 2017 scenario, 2018 scenario. I'm sorry, 2008 scenario. It's really more of a logistics of really making sure the timing doesn't drag on too long. And some of these deals, frankly, might slip into 2021 just because of timing. But we're confident that that's holding up, mainly because the developers are still developing and the investors still have demand. So that seems pretty good. Pricing may change a little bit. It always seems to, in an environment like this, but that does seem to work out pretty quickly. So I'd put that in the category of we're cautious, but looking okay. I'll let you comment on the mortgage side because you're seeing that as well. But I've heard from Ned that the pipeline is full. There's a lot of rates are low, and so there's really good opportunities there for refinances. I'm sure you face the same issues that we do on new construction. How do these deals are coming through, and are you going to be able to fund deals when you thought? Because they have to get through the construction cycle and really get leased up and things like that. The one area where we are seeing some softness is in our loan fund, our community loan fund, and that's the group basically that has the deals coming in before they go to tax credit deals, and so it's kind of the pre-development and things of that nature. Because they're on the front end, they're being impacted the most, and those developers really, a lot of them are asking for deferments until such time as they can get back into production. It's very manageable, but you can begin to see it on that group of developers that are really on the front end, probably being impacted the most because they never anticipated having to have another 3, 4, 5, 6 months worth of interest carry on a deal trying to get it into production. But that's kind of what we're here for. We try to work with them and really make that work out. The conventional equity team, the properties are performing. We did see some softening from April and now beginning into May, but again, it's very manageable. And so the kind of the thought is that we're probably going to see a little bit more softening in May, but generally speaking, those portfolios are holding up pretty well. So I think a lot of this is duration, and we're just going to have to see how long this takes to really come around. Stimulus money helps, but as well as I do, eventually people got to get back to work and earn a living and do things like that. And it's our job really to help our developers and borrowers kind of through that time period.
I know our thoughts are we had a fairly robust pipeline going into this, and we were able to close those transactions. Yeah. We've seen a lot of developers in April and I guess late March and into April were much more in asset management mode as it relates to what's going to happen. I think May and June are going to be telling for them, and they're trying to make sure they understand their collections and their cash flows and what have you. And the hope is then is beginning kind of in August that we start to come out the other side, we start to get to a normalized sort of a scenario, and we start seeing a pickup in acquisition activity. We start seeing, normalized occupancies and collections and those sorts of things that allows for the market to start to come back a little bit going into the fourth quarter. That's certainly the optimistic hope that we have at the moment. Yeah. The good thing is that I think forbearances have been relatively stable in the multi side. I just don't think that we've seen some, but it certainly hasn't been yet what I think what everybody was thinking would be. Cautiously optimistic that will continue, especially if we start to see states open in a reasonable way, that we start seeing the economy coming and people can make their payments and such.
Yeah, I agree.
So one of the things I've been talking to my team about is, it's an opportunity for us to do two things now. I think one is to, keep looking sideways to make sure about what we're doing in terms of being in the middle of it right now, but also putting an eye forward as to, okay, how do we, when we come out of this, are we positioning ourselves correctly, learning the lessons that we take, but being prepared and ready for the market to come back. So when you're looking at it from ECI, from your perspective, is, where do you want the ECI entities to be focusing their attention post-pandemic? It's where do you see opportunities or how do they, what are you kind of envisioning as they look forward, not just being in the midst of crisis and asset management mode?
Yeah. There's a couple of areas that might emerge out of this. The one, and I'm not really sure how this is all going to manifest itself, but my sense is that when you have a shock like this, there are going to be development teams out there, smaller development companies and things like that are going to want to basically find partners. Because they realize that in any type of economic shock like this, they need a bigger platform to work on. So when we found this in 2008, primarily, not so much in 16 and 17, but in 2008. So enterprise, the one thing they do is, try to find ways to bring capital to help those groups merge together, maybe buy this portfolio from this one and consolidate teams. So I think that's one item that ultimately might happen in this, and that, groups that are really just don't have the size and scale to really kind of make it through tend to want to find partners, and groups like Enterprise are there hopefully to find the capital for them to be able to do that, so they can stabilize those portfolios. In the end, we want stable, affordable housing portfolios. That's what we're looking for, and people to manage them properly, and to do the capital improvements and all those things that we stress with our underwriting and our reserves and things like that. The developer and the owner are the key to that. That's our partners, so we want those things to really function. So that's one. The other is bringing other people into affordable housing, like the healthcare sector, which we've been involved with now for several years, really trying to get them more engaged with understanding that a healthy home is really the beginning of good health outcomes, which helps for people's long-term success. So, and this is, smack in the middle of that with COVID-19. How do we basically handle all of the basic needs of an individual when they're really they're in their house? I mean, that is their home. That's where they're living. That's where everything takes place. The services need to come to them as opposed to them going to the services. So as an owner, and then also as a steward of affordable housing, how do we create partnerships and tools that ultimately deliver services and information to our tenants? And that, it doesn't always have to be in a crisis situation, but their daily lives are so crazy anyways. It just makes it work and flow better. And when as we've always believed the house is really the cornerstone, to really someone being successful in life, and all these pieces really can come out of that. So I do think we're going to get a push in that direction, which means we engage other people. Maybe it's the Comcasts and the Verizons of the world for internet services, the healthcare sector for telemedicine and how we deliver it, the big tech providers on broadband services. It's all kinds of pieces, and these aren't people that they might have invested in LIHTC credits. That's fine, we want that, but we really want their minds and their thought processes to bring these services to our tenants.
Gotcha. So we've got a short amount of time, so I want to just ask, one of the things that I've been heartened by through all of this is the kind of the spirit of people and helping others and looking outside themselves and trying to find ways to make other people's lives a little bit better as we go through this, through donation, through time, through what have you. Any examples that you've heard kind of through the enterprise thing that just kind of made you sit back and go, wow, and it maintains your faith in humanity through all of it? You had that?
I'll tell you, the sweet spot for us is our enterprise residential team, which is the property management and resident services group that takes care of our 14,000 units. And those people are on the front lines every single day. And I guess we always think about them as the maintenance and the property management, this and that. Well, they've taken on a whole different responsibility of what they do. They are the link, if you will, to those tenants to the outside world, and those tenants rely on them not just to fix the air conditioning, to really be their friend and be there to help and find. So that group, and there's hundreds of these stories in our portfolio, are there to really help them figure out their daily needs, find the food bank, get them, take them to the doctors, and do those things. That was never in their job description. They just do it. Okay. And those for me, those are those frontline providers. We see it with the nurses and the doctors and that staff. Well, for a property owner, that's the team, and you see it day in and day out.
Excellent. So if we kind of get through and we start looking towards the end of all of this, any last kind of words of advice for people as you're kind of getting through today and going forward, that any words of wisdom, since you've lived in both, you and I both have, through the 2008, 2009, this is obviously feels a little bit different, feels more personal in a lot of ways, not to discount what happened back then, but it's a little bit more global. So any words or thoughts or of advice here?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, and this is also for a lot of the people at Enterprise, it's how we really reinforce the basic needs of a tenant, a low and moderate income tenant. Others have resources, and ultimately they can kind of fend on their own. But there are a lot of people out there, they just need to have access to resources. but really double down on that. But it's not just basically to take care of the next meal and things like that. It's skills and tools. So how we can basically, have the well-being of an individual really be serviced better by these programs that we develop and the things that we do. Some of it has to do with capital. It does, making the right capitals out there. But I think a lot of it has to do with better understanding what a resident needs are in a crisis situation as well as in an everyday situation. And we can learn a lot from that. That piece coupled with us learning how to get along better together at the governmental level to solve problems, I hope they learn something at that. If that all happens, I'll be a happy person.
There we go. Well, Charlie, thank you again for taking the time. Great to speak with you as always. For everybody else out there, thanks for taking the time with us. Hope to see you on the first tee someplace.
Yeah.